Thank you for joining us this evening for the second edition of Terrazzo Talks here in Dubai. Also, a very warm welcome and greetings from the UAE to our viewers from around the world. I'm Lovraj, Talwar, the Managing Director of the Terrazzo Group. We have with us here two eminent panelists for the session, Mr. Olivier Crasson and Mr. Nelson Gibb. I have the pleasure to introduce Olivier, who is General Manager of Besix Middle East. Olivier is responsible for overseeing the contracting activities of B6 and 6 Construct in the GCC. Olivier has been with the B6 group for the last 15 years and has been involved in developing new ventures, mainly related to water and environment. Olivier also serves as a board member for a variety of ventures across the region. He is a law graduate, holder of a degree in international public affairs, and the list goes on and on. We are greatly privileged to have a person as experienced as Olivier on our session today. A very warm welcome to you, Olivier. I now would like to hand over to my co-moderator, Yuvraj, who is the Business Development Director of Terrazzo Group and will be introducing the second panelist, Nelson Gibb. Over to you, Yuvraj.
Thank you once again, Lovraj. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all in this second edition of Terrazzo Talks. The second one has come around remarkably quickly. I'm the Business Development Director of the group and will be moderating this much anticipated session. Today, our topic is incredibly relevant, especially to those of you that are stakeholders in the construction and or real estate sectors. And honestly, whom better could we have than the men in charge of two of the largest contractors in the Middle East, in Olivier Crasson and Nelson Gibb. They represent Besix and Dutco respectively. I have the pleasure of introducing Nelson. Nelson has been with Dutco since 1996 and is currently the group's Chief Executive Officer. The company has significant interest in multiple sectors and such as hospitality, construction, of course, development, and oil and gas. Dutco has built many of the noteworthy projects, landmark projects across the Emirates and beyond under his stewardship, under Nelson's stewardship, and we're incredibly proud and privileged to have both Nelson and Olivier with us today. The format of today's talk will be much in line with our first, but in case you missed our first talk, we will pose 5 to 6 questions to our panelists, and we will then open the floor up to the audience, who will then be able to interact with us and our panelists directly. The topic of today's discussion is can the construction industry sustain its momentum in the UAE specifically? It's an enormous question that undoubtedly needs significant discourse and reliable insight. And who better, as I said, to give us this insight than the gentleman present on this talk? So with that, I think we can move to the very first question that I'd like to pose to you, Olivier. It is common knowledge that obviously things have been relatively tough, especially in certain sectors or subsectors of the construction industry. Can you both, starting with Olivier, talk a little bit about how your respective businesses have fared over the last 2 to 3 years and how you see things going till the end of 2020? Over to you.
First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be with you this afternoon. It's a wide question, so perhaps a few words of our profile, because every company is different, and it's important to understand where we are coming from. All our clients are government-related entities, which means that we don't work with private developers. We are not involved in or directly involved in the real estate sector, and that has already a big impact on our activities, a big impact on what is happening to our company today, and a big impact on what happened in the last 2-3 years to our group. So we are mainly working to build infrastructure projects, very specific buildings, environmental projects, and marine works. And I have to say that in the last years, the number of those projects that have been put on the market by governments has not been as good as in the past. So the number of projects has reduced. The margin has become inexistent. To be very frank with all of you, when there is still a margin, it's very tiny. But usually the clients have become very tough with us. And what happened in the last since the beginning of the year, let's say last 6 months, has given another dimension to what's going on, or what was going on, with the oil price going down, with the delays caused by the pandemic. We have seen a reinforcement of the situation, and we had to review completely our strategy. So we have appointed a head of transformation and strategy in our Middle East entity, to think how we can organize ourselves post COVID-19 crisis. Nobody has the answer. In all the friends I have, all the people, the consultants, everybody has ideas, but nobody was able to be very convincing, including myself, because we don't really know where we are going. But we know that the cost structure of the companies, or the companies that we are managing in the region, the cost structure will have to be adapted, number one. And two, the selection of project and the type of solutions that we are going to offer will change, and is changing. I'm talking about public-private partnerships. I'm talking about design and build. I'm talking about a number of directions that we will have to take, especially when we know the status of the infrastructure in this part of the world, where I believe they have now almost everything, from a nuclear power plant to bridges, tunnel, fantastic highways, interchanges, ports. So everything is now provided. So where is the country going? And that's the $1 billion question.
Absolutely. We'd love to know the answer to that. Nelson, how about yourself? What would you like to add to that?
I think Olivier covered a lot of what we've been doing, but as you know, as Dutco, I guess, we're involved in all parts of the construction industry, amongst others. But what I would say is that what we've been doing is having a look at ourselves over the last few years in light of what we saw was a slowing down of the growth in the economy, and particularly in the construction sector. So we've been very much focused on where do we go next? What can we do to improve efficiency, reduce our costs, pick the right clients and the right customer base across the sort of varied businesses that we run in construction, everything from specialist mechanical, electrical, dredging, marine, buildings, infrastructure. And I must say, we've had to think long and hard about how we're going to compete in what has been a very, very challenging industry in the last, not even the last 2 years. I think it's been developing for some time. So you've got to look at yourself, and then you've got to look at what size is right for you in a market like this. And we were doing this pre-COVID. What COVID did was just bring everything to a much more accelerated position of difficulty. So, but I think what is important is that you look at the sectors, you look at your client base, and you try and develop a collaborative approach. And I think one of the points Olivier made, which I think was interesting, in this country, I think infrastructure can be delivered by private sector companies in government-private partnerships. That is the next stage that the government can move to. We've looked at it, we've bid them before. I think Olivier's company has been more successful in Sharjah in developing in the sewage side, I think, Olivier. But from our side, we looked at the road side and private partnerships. At the end of the day, we've got to be innovative. We've got to learn from the best practices elsewhere, and I think move into a much more developed phase of the construction sector and where it goes from
Got it.
I agree with what both of you have just said. You're both incredibly lucky to be in a niche market and have specialization, like both Six Construct as well as Dutco is specialized and has excellent skills in their own niche areas, which is much more than most other companies. So you'll continue to flourish. Maybe there'll be a little gap or setback once in a while, but basically because you've got these technical skills, you will be much better off than most of your competitors. If
we accept the statement. We accept the statement.
Right.
Oh.
So I just have a little follow-up question off the back of that. You know, both of your entities have been present in the region for decades now. How do you see the last 2 to 3 years differ from the previous decades of and are there any distinct learnings that these 2 to 3 years have given your organization and yourselves compared to the past?
Okay, shall I answer that first, Olivier? Because I think I probably go back a bit longer from a Dutco perspective, back to the late 70s, when Dubai went through quite a boom in terms of construction, and Abu Dhabi had already been through some of that. But we hit a fairly severe decline in the early 80s, and the oil prices had dropped, and again, most companies had to revisit their focus. And so, you know, the cycles will come and go. That's the world over. I think what I see is this cycle is slightly different in the sense that we've already established quite a sophisticated infrastructure, and the basic supply and demands of the construction industry were becoming a little bit dislocated in the sense that there was too much supply in the market. So I think that wasn't the case in the very early in the 80s going into the 90s. There was still a lot of room for other people. So I think this time around, I think it could be a lot harder. And for those companies that aren't well funded in the construction sector, I think they're going to struggle. And I think they have to reassess their risk appetite.
I think that's a good sort of segue into our next question. So Lovraj.
So going on to the next question, theory would suggest that with the decrease in government spending and private spending on new build and commercial and residential properties and infrastructure projects, your competition would have also proportionately decreased. Have you seen this happen? If so, has it helped you? If not, do you expect competition to decrease? Can I put it to Nelson first?
Okay, well, look, the answer to that is no, I don't think competition has reduced. It's still very much a buyer's market in the eyes of the client, and customers still have a lot of choice. So my philosophy is, depending on how the customer procures his services for the construction industry, you know, does he continue to have 10 people on a bid list, or does he become more selective? Does he nominate? Does he turnkey it? All of these factors will determine what level of competition is going to enter the market. But I think it's still highly competitive, Lovraj. And what I see going to happen, you're going to see the bigger contractors look at slightly smaller projects now, which is going to hurt the middle-sized contractors, because everyone's going to be hungry for what they can get, because everyone needs a critical mass of technical expertise. Otherwise, your risk factors grow exponentially if you can't deliver that exposure management. And the other thing I think you've got to think of in competition terms, Dubai's been open to everyone, international, local. It's going to be interesting for me, and Olivier is best to answer this. I've always known the international companies tend to move on, other than Besix and a few others, when the markets get tough. They'll come back maybe, but a lot of them move on. So it's going to be interesting to see the local guys like us. This is our domestic market. For the international guys, they're going to decide, is it too competitive, in which case will they move on to another region?
Yeah. I'll take that because it's an interesting statement you made, and or a very good question. We have been here for, I think, 55 years, almost 56 years. So, you know, we go back to 1965, and the company, our company, is a bit you know, torn apart between two trends. One, we feel ourselves an international contractor. On the other hand, we feel ourselves pretty much locals. But no, we are not really one of them. You know, when there are bigger international contractors, and they are today bigger local contractors. So when I speak to my head office in Belgium, and when I look at the perspectives, and if I want really to present things in a dark way, in a gloomy way, they will tell me, look, you know, in 5 years' time, we have to change region, because whatever we propose internationally has been provided for in this part of the world. The GCC has now everything. They have football stadiums, they have desalination plants, power plants, whatever, you name it. So let's go elsewhere. Let's go in a little bit more east, or let's go in Africa. So we can do that. On the other hand, as a local player, I do believe, and this is really why we have been here so long. We believe in the long-term partnership with the governments, and we want to understand where the country is going, and we want to be able to adapt our business lines to what the country is in need for. I'll give you an example. We didn't know anything, or almost anything, about sewage treatment plants 20 years ago, but we felt that there was a need, and the need was effectively the fact that there were lakes everywhere. The population was growing, and different Emirates needed to find solutions. And we embarked into that journey, and we managed to offer solutions from a PPP to an EPC contract, depending on where we were. And we have now treatment plants in Abu Dhabi, Al Ain, Ajman, Sharjah, Dubai, and so forth and so forth. Then but again, we didn't know that. That's a technology that we have acquired, and we have acquired companies to help us to do that. And now we have touch wood, a good reputation, and we continue. Now, then we've observed what the market was willing to, where the market was going. And the next stage was the management of solid waste. Again, we didn't have a lot of experience in solid waste management, because, you know, for sewage there was a lot of lakes with sewage in it, and for solid waste there are piles of rubbishes everywhere, and it becomes, you know, it starts to take space, and we need to do something about it. So we've organized ourselves 5 years ago to be well set to tender for the waste to energy plant in Dubai, and luckily we had a good partner, and we have now started the works. So solid waste management is something we had no idea about years ago, and now we are fully in. And there are now a number of projects that are going that way. So the question we are asking ourselves is, what's next? As you said, Nelson, what's next? So probably maybe logistics, maybe data centers, maybe we will have to have another profile in terms of oil and gas. Where can we play a role in the oil and gas industry? But I think we have to sustain in this part of the world. We have to consider ourselves as locals, because if we behave as an international contractor only, it's clear that from a desktop study made in Europe, you will see, you know, there is a lot of debt, not many projects. So what's the purpose? I'm convinced that it's exactly the opposite. We have to stay here. We have to understand what the market needs, what the governments need, and we have to adapt ourselves to serve them in the best possible way.
If I understood you correctly, Olivier, you referring to diversification and looking at how you pivot to what the government wants in the future. I think that also stems from there's an increasing feeling on the ground. At least my opinion is that construction is and subcontractor value to the client is becoming increasingly commoditized. And I think Nelson, you might agree with that as well. If you do you consider, other than the obvious, becoming more efficient and reducing costs? I mean, it's easier said than done, obviously, and there's only so much you can do. Do you consider backward and forward integration as an option to remain increasingly competitive and add more value in the market to a client? So sort of backward integrate into a supply chain or forward into a developer in itself. Is that something that either of your groups have delivered?
Yeah, I would say movement in the value chain, integrations, and expansion of our positioning on the value chain are part of the current reflections, indeed. Yeah,
I think that's right. I think in our case, we're obviously developers as well in our own right, but I think what we've looked at is to look at new areas where we can add value. And one of those areas we've looked at is to integrate, as Olivier alluded to there, where we can do most things by self-performing ourselves. So very much now we see our MEP sector under a lot of threat. So because we're big in that sector and we're big on the main contractor side, more and more jobs we do now, we integrate the two together. So it's a seamless relationship, which is important for the consultant and the customer. And I see that as a way to go forward in terms of being able to self-perform a lot more, to take away risk from projects, to reduce the conflict nature of projects as much as possible. Because that's the biggest cost burden to the client and to the contractor, is conflict in a project. So there's lots of ways to do this. I think that another important point Olivier, I think, alluded to as well, we've got to keep evolving. We've got to look for new areas. Now, data centers, I think, is obviously now on everyone's radar. It's been here a while, but it's on people's radar now with online shopping, with the demand of that. That technology is going to drive another capability that is going to be required to build these, and a different way to build them. This is where partnerships come in. And likewise, on the design build side, this market's not, the regulations of this market actually are not particularly geared to design build, because the regulations from the municipality and the likes and the Baladia dictate that there's a certain way that they want that separation of consultant and contractor traditionally and historically. But the more you can reduce the points of interface where conflict could occur in a project, I see that as a source of improvement in efficiency and productivity and a better finish to a project. So there's lots of evolution the contracting industry has to do, not just from a technology point of view, which we'll talk about later, but certainly, in my view, about how you do things. You know, and competition will fit into that bracket, or it will fall away. And I think on the international front, I think Olivier is a local company. We see them as that. And as you know, we started by being very, very strong in joint ventures, still are. But the reality is, the international contractors who will survive here are the ones who take the view from an international perspective. They're a local company. Yep. You don't fly in and fly out. That's not what you do. That's just our view on it.
So just a slightly pointed question, I think, to Nelson. And I think, Olivier, you didn't answer this as directly. I think you both alluded to the fact that competition hasn't decreased, at least in your spaces. So are you surprised that competition hasn't decreased? I mean, at least in our space, we're obviously in the building materials business. And in each profit center, we've got a lot of competition. We neither have seen a decline in competition proportionate to what we consider the economic decline to have been through COVID, prior to COVID. Does that surprise you?
Wait one more year, then you will see. We are still tendering now with we are tendering. We had a review meeting now, and we have another one after that for another tender. And the first question is who is in the competition? Okay, and we have on one project we have 7 other competitors, out of which 3 Chinese, and 2 very big locals, and 2 names I don't know. But so they are still there, but I think it's still there. They can still hold it a little bit. We as an international, with our international base, but being here locally, I can tell you that we are suffering. We are suffering a lot, and so it means that those guys, except the Chinese perhaps, but those guys are going to suffer as well. Look at what happened to Arab Tech, and look at the consequences of Arab Tech's situation in the throughout the value chain. Today, or yesterday, or this week, there was the announcement. But we look at the consequences. It will take a few months, and it will be the domino effect. And I think in 6 months' time, the expression, the fittest, the survival of the fittest, will be what will be the #1 expression in the region. We have to remain fit, because at the moment some people can make the illusion, but I think the competition is very tough. They are fighting like hell, but I think it will not last. It cannot last, because there are not enough projects. Simply.
Do you agree with
my opinion, Nelson? I don't know if you agree with me, but
no, I think you're right. I think it comes from two fronts here. COVID has accelerated what was already an oversupply in the market. So competition, and it takes time in an economic situation for it to work its way through. It never surprises me in this part of the world how deep some companies' pockets are, that they can survive. That does amaze me at times. Taking your point, Yuvraj, it's beyond economic sense. I think though, when you look back, I don't think as a client, but let me talk as a let's call it as a customer, to have 10 people or 8 people on a bid list, I don't particularly think that's a great thing, because that means you're chasing price. If you're 4 or 5 equally competent who have been through a technical process and you equalize that, then you'll get a better value proposition for the job that you're trying to win. So I actually agree with Olivier. I think it's a matter of time as the consequences of people not getting paid, of people losing money, it will come through the system, and eventually they can't keep continuing. But I'll tell you who will make the decision for them. Ultimately, it should be the banks. Because if you're not properly funded, you should not be in the business. Remember, in construction, we have an advance payment bond if we're lucky, we have a performance bond, and if we're really lucky, we might get a retention bond. That's the best part of 30% tied up in your bank facilities just to be in the game.
Yeah.
How many people can do that? How many banks are going to play in the construction sector today with the appetite they've done in the past? I would say they're having the same talks that you're having around this table here. They're revisiting which asset classes they want to lend to.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Vince Cook, the CEO of National Bank of Fujairah, was on our first panel. He did mention that one of the areas they are still pretty keen on is contracting for the right promoter, and that was the key distinction that he made. So it's interesting you said that. It would be great to get you guys on a panel separately. Great. So I think that takes us on to our third question, which is linked to what you've just said. The lack of liquidity in the construction sector is obviously no secret. Both of you, and to an extent us ourselves, are privileged in the sense that there were relatively big businesses that can sustain the most extreme downturns, such as this one. But not everyone watching this panel has access to the pockets we may have access to. How do you suggest that businesses linked to the industry in whatever way manage themselves going forward what advice can you impart to an entrepreneur, to a business owner that may be watching this talk today?
I'll start with that liquidity. I mean, it's the problem of any business, is it not? It's acute in construction in particular, given the conditions of contract we work to, the demands of working capital. But I think what COVID's probably done for everyone is it's put cash flow back in the forefront of their thinking. Instead of chasing turnover to pay for the next job, actually what COVID's done is make you look at your cash flow every day and every week. And I think smaller companies and entrepreneurs, they're more acute at looking at that as part of their day-to-day business. Some of the big corporates, they can be a little bit blasé, that the big parent will fund them out if there's a short-term problem. When it's your own little business, you're the parent, and you can't always do that. So I think the smaller guys have always been aware of their cash flow implications. So my advice is, from my point of view, live within your means. If you get to the right size, get the right critical mass that suits your risk profile. Don't be too big and you can't be too small by definition, or you can't service the product you're trying to deliver. Yeah. So that would be my advice, is really look at yourself introvertly and size yourself accordingly. And then manage your cash and in whatever way, and ultimately perform. Because don't give the guy a reason to say he won't pay you because he doesn't think you've performed. Because that's the easiest excuse in the world for clients to hide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Olivier, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. It's take the project you can deliver them, and cash is king. That would be my advice. But it's exactly the same. That I have the same opinion, and Nelson. Yeah.
Okay, so that takes us to the next question. What are the areas of growth you see in the United Arab Emirates for your respective businesses? How do you see the industry shaping up over the next 3 to 5 years? Nelson, would you like to take that question?
Okay, I'll have a first go at this one. This is a hard one, no? Lovraj, you're making this more difficult. Look, I think we're in for a period of some consolidation. And I think we're in for a tough period, particularly here, given you've got to look at each country where their sectors demand and have a requirement for different things. Here in Dubai, for example, you've got such a world-class infrastructure. The government's done such a good job. It's the next phase of that development that you have to look at. I mean, for me, I see for our companies, they have to get smart. We have to look at different ways to deliver on projects that are out there. But the area I see some possible growth is in the refurbishment of existing structures. A lot of our buildings are getting old, believe it or not. They've been around a while, and I think they have to be looked after. So I think there's a whole asset management product which has to be delivered in a professional way. And I think that's going to be interesting. I think COVID's going to demand certain modifications, particularly in the commercial real estate business, for those real estate owners who want to keep moving with time. So I think there is opportunity still going to emerge. I think a lot of companies here will obviously look to Saudi Arabia. And my goodness, if they do half of what they say they're going to do, that's a big business. That's a big market. And their infrastructure is hugely in need of contractors who can deliver professionally. Don't get me wrong, there's enough Saudi contractors out there who also can deliver. So it's still going to be highly competitive, but I think there may be more work there. And we're looking at other areas of growth. The data centers was mentioned. We're looking at modular businesses. We're looking at a whole raft of different opportunities in the sector. which need to be developed to the next level. So, you know, in infrastructure, it might be private finance be coming into play. A lot of maintenance and repair. I see that as an area where there could still be some business to be done. So, yeah, and then some geographical diversification is obviously going to be needed if you want to retain a certain level of size.
I think the UAE still has a lot of plans which haven't yet been unfolded, and once these plans come out into the open, you will realize there is enough work for all big contractors with especially skills like both of you. It looks as if we've got enough of everything at the moment, but there's a lot more to come. I can tell you that if you were to go to the Dubai municipality and other departments, they've got mega plans still in the making, and if those come to fruition, there'll be huge amounts of work coming up in time to come.
I agree, Lovraj. Sorry, I'll let Olivier come in, but I agree. I'm quite optimistic longer term. I think we've got to go through a period. There's no harm in having dips in your economy. That's not a problem. It's how you manage it. And I would like to see a little bit, let us see how Dubai reinvents some of the industries they're trying to bring here, because that will create demand in itself. And they're already in discussion over that. So, and you mentioned yesterday when we were having a brief chat, I think ADNOC in the oil and gas sector, and Olivier mentioned it, that's not going to go away. Even, you know, at $40 oil, there is still a market. Hydrocarbons aren't disappearing. Renewables are still there. There's lots of still things we need to get to. We just need to be more innovative in the way we look at it.
Nelson, I can assure you that we'll be having a webinar like this 1 or 2 years later, and we'll be laughing at our comments what we are now.
I can only tell you what I'm suffering today. That's all.
Olivier, do you want to add something to what Nelson had to say?
I fully concur with Nelson. It's a vast and difficult question. I agree with the refurbishment concept. I would add that we will go for most probably to the conversion of some assets into that types of assets, maybe a hotel that is going to be converted into a hospital or whatever. But yeah, some assets class will be turned into something else. Yes, modular. Yes, 3D printing. Why not? Of course, the rush is, or apparently the rush is towards Saudi Arabia, and a fraction of what is going to happen there would make us all very, very happy. And then I think there will be a lot of sophistication in the business going forward, especially in the asset management, manage the energy of the existing assets, using more technology. But in the headlines, I would say I fully agree with Nelson. We share the same view. We share absolutely the same view.
Great.
Yeah.
So just a quick question on that. You both mentioned Saudi Arabia, and everyone's sort of focus shifting to that. Are both of your groups respectively looking at Saudi Arabia keenly? Are you quoting anything at the moment that you're sort of willing to share? And anywhere else in the region, or even beyond the region, potentially East Africa, is there anything else beyond Saudi Arabia? And just if you could speak a little bit more about Saudi Arabia, that'd be useful, even from our perspective.
Look, I will take this one first, perhaps, Nelson.
Yes, please. Yeah.
We have worked in Saudi Arabia a number of times, and we were there 10 years ago. We left 6 years ago after having constructed Jeddah Sport City, a fantastic football stadium, sports stadium in Jeddah for King Abdullah. Beautiful. After that, we had some very sour experiences where we lost money, and our chairman has decided us to pull out. So since then, things happened. Things changed in the kingdom, and we've heard about the Red Sea project, Amala, and Misk, and so forth and so forth. And we have been approached by the different entities that are in charge of these projects working under the umbrella of PIF. So we spoke to these entities, and they have indeed very, very ambitious projects. And it happened in the last 2 years, I would say. So we are really in more than an observation mode, because we are starting to get ready for the first tenders. But there are a few hurdles. The first hurdle is for us the size of these projects. We have been approached 2 months ago for a project where the size is $12 billion dirhams, or Saudi riyals. It's huge. It's huge. For us, we would prefer to have these type of packages split into 4, 5, or even 10 to make it sellable internally. Because going to be responsible for a project, even if it is in joint venture or in consortium, where we are talking about billions of dollars, that's a bit tough. So I would say the size of the packages and the procurement is not yet mature enough, in our view. I might be wrong. Yeah, there are bigger contractors, Korean contractors who are already there. There are French contractors who are there, American contractors who are there. As far as we are concerned, we feel that it's not yet there, coming, but not yet there. So size matters in that respect, because risk matters, and we don't really know how the risk will be allocated. We are, and this happened to answer your first question, Yuvraj. We have seen in the last years the risk allocation moving in a very offensive way to the contractors. We don't want to happen to us if we go to Saudi Arabia, because at the moment the contracts are, especially in the UAE, are drafted to push everything to the contractors. And then, is it going to be the case in Saudi? I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I think with the amount of work that is coming out in Saudi Arabia, surely they will adjust to the demands and requirements of the contractors like yourself, because they want world-class contractors to come and not get discouraged by their terms and conditions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nelson, would you agree with Olivier's assessment?
Yeah, look, I think 100%. I think he made a very good point there. There's a certain size that you just should not risk your balance sheet on. You know, you lose 10% of a $12 billion or 12 billion real project. That hurts even the biggest. You know, that hurts Bechtel, never mind anyone else. So I definitely think that that you have to be very cautious. You have to see it. You know, I think something came up on the screen. A question was asked by Paul, I think, about collaborative contracts. And quite honestly, it comes down to the risk-reward relationship that the contract defines. If they get that, if they measure that correctly, they're going to get a lot of quality if they get the balance right. And I think if they do that, they'll get value for money, but they'll also get projects done on time, less litigation. And I think they could set a trend. So yeah, look, I think it's a wait and see game. We need to see. It's not moved as quickly as we all thought it would. So I think it's now starting to gain some momentum. But we won't forget our domestic market. The UAE is still our domestic market. Yeah. We have to look after this market first and foremost, and not get carried away. With maybe gold in the pavements or maybe not gold in the pavements. We have to wait and see.
Yeah. So yeah, coming back to sort of a bit closer to home, how do you believe Expo 2021 will impact the construction industry? It might sound a bit late for that question. And say we as an organization have not benefited to the Expo at the Expo site. So I just wanted to ask you, have you, and any surprises for you, if someone had asked you this 5 years ago, did you experience the benefits that you thought you may have experienced 5 years ago, whenever the Expo was announced?
Well, from our side, I don't think we weren't a major player in the Expo construction. That's for sure. We were comfortable. We had worked elsewhere, I guess. But no, I don't think we were we weren't one of the majors. Over the time, did it increase, or did it just replace did it keep things at a similar level? Was there such a peak that was expected from a construction sector perspective, or was it actually projects that the Balladeer had been doing in previous times, or RTA had been issuing, or developers? I wouldn't say we see much coming out of 2020 and into 2021 for us at the moment, unless a couple of the pavilions are needed to be built, but they tend to be done through the embassies and through their connections with their own contracting entities. So yeah, I'm a bit like you. Yeah, a bit more, but it didn't come our way.
Yeah, same with us. Same with us. We've been involved in the infrastructure of the site. We have built we are finishing now the stormwater tunnel linking the Expo 2020 site to the sea. That was a big infrastructure project for Dubai municipality. But we are building 2 pavilions, the pavilion of our home country, Belgium, and France as well. For the rest, it did not generate or create value, apart from the maybe the big infrastructure work, but for the rest, no real. It's a bit of a disappointment, I would say, for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we concur as an organization with that as well. I just want to add to that. I think the near end of, so sort of halfway through the Expo, is consistently coined as an assumed recovery within our sector and the broader economy. Economically speaking, there'll probably be a vaccine out, retail could sort of reach pre-pandemic levels. Do you, from a construction perspective, think that there will be a bit of an uptake at the end of 2021? Do you have any evidence to sort of back that up at all?
Olivier, do you want to?
No, please.
Okay, I think that's a tough question, Yuvraj, in the sense it really is a crystal ball. I think, like you, there is going to be some return to hopefully normality. We depend on the tourists for Dubai in particular. Even Abu Dhabi needs visitors to come as well, less reliant, obviously. So I think and it's our 50th anniversary next year as a country. So we are hopeful that the visitors and the uptake comes back. But I think, we have to be very cautious, but I think they will come back. I think it's a matter of time. It's too good a place not for people to come. It's more, as I said before, the government have created a world-class set of facilities here. So it's safe. So I think it will come back. Now, how does that impact the construction sector? Will there be a rush to build more this and more that? No, I think there's a reset for a couple of years as to what do we have now. And taking a point Olivier made, this was after the financial crisis. Actually, a lot of buildings had been built, and a lot of them went from offices to hospitality. They were changed midstream. I think there is a point where a lot of the structures that are being developed, a lot of people will rethink where they want to place their capital. So, yeah, look, I think we should look to a stable. I would rather see rather than this up and down. I'd like to a stable sense of good quality construction work being available. on a competitive basis. If we can get some stability around that for the next 2 years, and the fittest survive maybe, the well-funded survive, there will still be sufficient of those that makes this industry still competitive, but hopefully maybe a little bit more balanced.
Fair point. I think that summarized very well. Thanks, Nelson. I think we're ready for the next question.
Now we are on to our last question before we take some questions from the audience. The construction industry globally has been slow to adopt technology innovations despite a rise in project complexity and associated risks. Are you making any investments into digitalizing your businesses? How do you see technology impacting the industry? Who would like to take that question?
I'll let Olivier go with that one first, because he's probably got a wider range of that from his head office experience.
Yeah. Lovraj, you're absolutely right. And when you look at the McKinsey studies, you can see that the construction industry has not really evolved over the years, over the 100 years, the last 100 years, even the last 10 years. And all the organizations worldwide have to improve their productivity. And when you look at construction today, the construction industry, at least in our company, but I think Nelson will agree with me, we do not have the ideal tool to improve productivity. We don't have yet the integration of all the millions of data that are available around the project and around all the projects that we have delivered, or the projects that have been delivered around the world. And since we don't have access to these data, we have very often to reinvent the wheel. So this is a value destruction. And what we are doing now, we are developing a tool, a proprietary tool, capable of digitalizing all the information in order to improve productivity and reach a lower price or lower cost price and better execution. Now it's not easy because this does not exist, or I couldn't find it, and we couldn't find it on the market, on the shelf. So we had to develop that. And I was a bit disappointed or surprised that the construction industry doesn't have that available. But yeah, it is a situation. So as far as we are concerned, we have now created a department, digitalization, technology, with a number of people, a few nerds, really specialized in data management, and we intend to start our next project actually in 2 months' time, fully with this by using this system. But it's a proprietary system, so inshallah we can sell it one day.
That's great. Lovely.
Awesome. Sorry, just a quick follow-up question to you, Olivier and Nelson. Internally for us, we're trying to incorporate a lot of digital aspects to our business. I guess this indirectly is one of them. We're also in a talk show on Zoom. Who would have thought? A construction group. But internally, it's been relatively difficult to manage or create a department, as you said, around technological advancement, because people within the industry are not technologically tuned. We're set in our ways. We like doing construction the way we've been doing them with the last 100 years, as you said. So internally, if either of you plan to set up that department, I mean, if you don't have the support from your leadership group within your organization, is that a problem that you've had?
Yeah, of course. But you have to show examples. And when you show, so we ask a few consultants to come and show what the AI can do. And the big thing about AI is that it goes beyond what the human brain can conceive. So when you show a number of examples and you link all the data and then you have all these correlations that appear, it's an explosion in your brain. So and you can then start making some decisions in a better way, something that you could not even imagine that was possible in the past. So what we did is actually with my colleague Valerie, who you guys know, Lovraj, you know very well. We have really invested in first demonstrating to. We have project management meetings where we invite the top 50 or the top 60 of the company, and we have demonstrated what is possible to do with the system. And I would say almost everybody was very skeptical at the beginning of the demonstration, and after the demonstration, everybody wanted to have it. So you have to show you have to show an example, and then you can convert people.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a super point. Nelson,
Yeah, I think, as you say, construction is about the leaders demonstrating that they're behind something, and that tends to get a following, which I think is important. We've been very slow as an industry to really change the way we do things, as we've highlighted here. But what Olivier is talking about, which I think is very important, is on the data side of collecting of information. We've been, I think different companies have developed their own systems, some have priority, but generally they've done their own. So, and it's all been around the financial side more than the money side, than the productivity side, generally. And the problem with that is you're getting the information not in real time. It's too late. So in the technology changes on the administrative side and in the project management control side, we're trying to get information and develop information that's real time so that you can make decisions that change the course of events, not 6 weeks later, 2 months later when the horse is already out of the stables, it's gone. Then you're on the back foot. So I think all of that is important, and technology is going to help with that. You've seen people using drones to monitor projects. All of that will help, but it needs to be integrated into a management information system that people can make real decisions with. And we need to do more of it, and we need to do more of it better. But fundamentally also, we need to get better just on the basics of, let's go back to basic training. When you drive past a concrete pour in this town, and I'll take you to some other countries in the world, we've probably got about 30 people more on that pour than we should have. We actually have to get better at that as well. Don't lose. Technology will not replace that for us as a contractor. We have to get better there. We can get better tools. We can get the most recent tools. We can place the equipment in the right place from a logistics perspective. But we also have to train our men and supervise our men better. And I would say that I think the quality we have lost over the many years on the direct works that we do, and I don't know, Olivier, if it's you as well, but I think we have lost some of the quality craftsmen, skilled supervision that we once had. I think we've lost a few of those guys. That continually needs to be developed. And on the design front, look, CAD's been around a long time. We're developing our BIM capabilities. But ultimately that's great, but it's how you use it.
Yeah.
And you've got to train your people to use it well and use it the right way. So it's a holistic view in my mind. It's not the magic, there's no silver bullet that technology will improve us. You need to look at all the bits in the equation to try and use them all to get better performance out of your people, your equipment, and use technology to that effect. But we've got some fundamentals in my mind that we still have to improve on. And that's some of the basic stuff that we still can improve on, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But Nelson, to that, have you seen any resistance internally from sort of setting up or managing BIM better, or using BIM better? Has there been any resistance within the organization just because people are used to doing things the way they've always done it?
No, I think a good example from my perspective is on the design and drawing side, and the production of the BIM system is there to see problems before they come. But I guarantee you the number of variations we still face, or challenges and conflicts we face on projects with coordination problems, with conflict of clashes. We need to eliminate things like that. And BIM should be helping us do that, and it does. Our people are, I genuinely believe, I don't see a lot of resistance. What I see is the ability to train people to get better themselves. Most people want to learn. You've got to look on the good on people. Most people want to get better. They want to better themselves. And I think you've got to create the atmosphere they can do that. So resistance for me with people is for leadership to overcome. That's a failing on leadership. It's not a failing on the person.
Yeah,
exactly. That's true.
Yeah. So just one last little question, because it's getting quite interesting. Do you think there's been an acceleration so across e-commerce, retail, whatever it may be? I'm sure all of you probably bought something online that you wouldn't have probably 2 years ago because of the pandemic. So in many cases, the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of new technology across industries. I know it's probably a far drawn comparison, but is there any sort of acceleration because of COVID that you guys have implemented within your businesses from a technological standpoint, even if it's just as simple as a Zoom meeting, which I'm
I've asked the IT department last week, how many Teams meetings have been organized since the 17th of March, where, the lockdown, or the 18th of March, when the lockdown started. And I realized that I was really, really shocked to see that we had 13,000 meetings set up on Teams since March. 13,000.
Unbelievable.
So you can extrapolate of course, there are a number of meetings that are extremely tiring. Everybody has now, during the lockdown, had meetings from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening without any interruption. It was extremely tiring, and so forth and so forth. But what it brought to us is I think it has shown or demonstrated that we can have very efficient meetings, shorter, well prepared, virtual, where we and at no cost. Our travel expenses have traditionally been very, very high because we are covering the region and we have people coming up and down to Europe all the time. This year, the difference has been dramatic without really impacting the way of working. So, and we had a number of people who had, of course, who have suffered about the situation, because we realized also that from a family point of view, it was not easy. How many meetings we've had with the children playing or crying in the background. We knew everybody now is on Earth, and especially in our company, but on Earth knows that they have to mute when they are not talking because it can disturb all the others. So we've been through all these phases, but this is exactly as you say. It's a simple example that has forever changed our way of working. It will be now very exceptional to go to a country for a 1 hour meeting. Last year, it was once a week. This year, I don't think it's justified. You can, unless you have these exceptional circumstances where you have to meet very specific individuals. But the normal business relationship can perfectly be handled through a screen like we have today.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Anything to add to that, Nelson?
No, I think he's right. I think this has been the biggest change for all of us. But at the end of the day, at the project levels, they still have to interface to build a project, and that's not changed. And it's important that we don't lose sight of one important thing, and that is the health and safety of our people is the most important thing. And actually, this COVID brought that very much home. And looking after our people became the priority much more than it previously had been. So Now, has technology changed that? No, but what it has done, it's made us realize that whatever means we have to improve our performance, improve the health and well-being of our people, technology can be used in a much more productive way. And I think monitoring thousands and thousands and thousands of people during the COVID epidemic, the whole database, the IT systems, the IT departments were working their socks off in the early days to cope with this. So, I think we've got to take from this the positives and improve on where we were. And as I said, the most important thing it did was it made people stop, pause, and think very carefully of where they were and what they needed to do. And as Olivier said, these meetings have become probably the biggest thing, along with online shopping, that's come out of the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I guess we can only hope that the rest of the sort of technological aspects are accelerated just as much. So I think that's the end of our questions. So with that, I think we're ready to move on to the audience. We've got quite a few things coming in on YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom in itself. So Nelson, you made reference to Paul's question. I'm going to just repeat it once again if there's anything more to add. So Paul asks, how do you perceive collaborative contracting to the UAE market? Global practices such as alliance contracts or integrated project delivery. This focusing on value for project outcomes instead of outputs. So
I think a good question. Absolutely, on the ball. The nearest I got to that in my experience lately was prior to the financial crisis. And it was driven for the wrong reasons to some degree, that clients started to fear that they wouldn't get their projects built and developed. So they became far more collaborative in their discussions and transparent as contractors and clients to see different ways to develop. And we actually had a few alliances back then. Sadly, post the financial crisis, I'm afraid a lot of the contractual relationships went back to the type of more conflict driven, more one-sided. So, Europe is very successful with these collaborative arrangements. Olivier can explain it better. My experience from being in the United Kingdom, a lot of those businesses there have survived because of the alliances, the collaborative arrangements that they were in downturns. So I think it's a very important development that we need to move to.
Olivier, anything to add to what Nelson just mentioned?
I think it's a bit, I agree with Nelson. I think it's a bit early at the moment, but it's needed. We haven't, we have not yet reached a stage where collaboration is positively perceived. We had a few experiences, but it was not yet. I don't think it's mature yet.
I think that's a fair point as well. Maturity is an important point. The other thing, the contractor also has to lose this image that we're pirates. Yeah. That we're every opportunity we're gonna overcharge. We've got to lose that image.
Yeah.
And prove that we're not.
Yeah. You know the story. I was talking to a local the other day, and he was telling me, that we wanted to build a bridge between the hell and paradise. Yes. And then he gave money to both managers, the manager of the hell and the manager of the paradise. And after 6 months, the bridge between hell and paradise was halfway, starting from hell. And then he went on paradise and he said, okay, when are you guys going to start your work? And he said, I could not find a contractor in paradise. And he was serious when he was telling me that. I said, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
So I'm going to move on to the second question. As I said, we can't get to everyone's, but I'll try and cover at least another 2 to 3. A certain Jonathan Miranda says, "Good evening, everyone. Great session. What has been the most challenging parts individually for both of you, and as being a part of the industry, what are the biggest challenges you both experienced? And what are you doing as key players in the construction industry to ensure deadlines are met while keeping in line with safety and health guidelines?"
Okay, I'll kick that one off. Again, I think health and safety, to be fair, is the first on any agenda of any reputable company in our industry. At any meeting, health and safety is the first item on the agenda. And it's not lip service, I'm not just saying it, but we do care. And it is important that when people come to work in the morning, they go home to their families at night. And we have an obligation in that period to make sure that happens. And it is a challenge. You know, construction sites are very dangerous places, as you all know. So it is a key priority, and you can never be complacent, and you can never do enough. Where are the challenges in getting projects delivered? It's a funny old place. I always say to some of our joint venture partners elsewhere in the world that, you know, you guys are okay sitting at the top because clients rarely get to you. They rarely find you. In this part of the world, every client I have, he goes to the top. He doesn't waste time if he feels his projects aren't being performed as he sees it. And that, in some ways, it's a good thing. And in others, it's difficult. But I think care and attention to the detail and getting your guys to realize, think as the client as much as you think as the contractor. He wants his project. He wants it to succeed. You know, they're not there to trip you up. They're there to help you. So, you know, go in with a very open, collaborative mind. If you go in with a conflict-driven project type attitude, you will get conflict, 100%. And all I ever ask for the team is the client, the consultant, and the contractor, are we not all working for the same aim, which is to finish the job to a high quality on time? Why has one side got a desire to make that not happen? And I never can answer that, because we all should have that aim, and that should be the goal. And I find if you can get that triangle all working in the same direction, you have less trouble in your jobs.
Olivier, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I also want to answer the both questions, actually. In terms of health and safety, the COVID-19 crisis has put things in perspective, because I think most of all the construction companies have actually been managing the crisis for a big part of the population of the country, because we are responsible for thousands of laborers, and we have to ensure their health and safety during the crisis. And I think all the construction companies have managed very well. We have to take a lot of measures that nobody is going to pay for, by the way, like, you know, additional buses, additional camps, and so forth, accommodations, and so forth and so forth. And I think that the industry has demonstrated that we can do it, and we will do it. And as far as my personal biggest challenge in the construction industry, it's actually not really related to the construction industry, but it's related to the environment and to the culture, where actually I'm coming from Belgium, from Europe, and for me the biggest difference that I have encountered between my country and this country is time. For me, you know, time, and for my shareholders, time has a certain dimension, has a certain pace, and is totally different than here, because here, by definition, you have you know, the way projects are prepared takes a lot of time, and then you have to execute them extremely fast. We don't have these dynamics in Europe, but also on maybe on another note, what I have noticed is that, you know, short term, mid term, long term in my country would be, you know, short term this week, mid term 2-3 years, and long term 10 to 20 years. Whereas most of my friends are saying that short term is this afternoon in the UAE, mid term is Saturday or Sunday, and long term is at the end of the month, you know. and this sometimes is a bit challenging. Gentlemen, I will have to make a move soon. I don't want to escape the last question, but I'm called to another call.
There's just one very short question that I'm gonna just pose to you guys. From Rohit Gupta, that is, Kuwait has seen very few UAE-based major contractors having a JV consortium in Kuwait with Kuwaiti-based contractors. Why is that? Well, why do you think that is? And do you have any intention of entering the Kuwaiti market?
Look, I would certainly say that Kuwait is an interesting market from our perspective, and we actually, some of our trading businesses operate in Kuwait, and we've actually worked up in Kuwait in the past. It was quite a tough place at one time in terms of competing in the local environment and actually contractually getting things done. But yeah, I think Kuwait has opportunities. I definitely think so. I think it's difficult because it's got a lot of contractors there. I would want to joint venture, I think, if I was going into Kuwait. It would be a sensible approach with a good local firm. We did have some relationships there and still do. But I think Kuwait will start to spend some money if they can sort some things out. I think Kuwait needs to spend money. Their infrastructure needs to they've got money that they need to spend, actually, if you look at Kuwait and where it is in the Gulf.
Interesting. Do you have a similar view, Olivier?
We have been there 20 or 30 years ago, and it didn't work well. And since then, we had so much work in the UAE that we didn't find the necessity to go back. Yeah. But maybe, inshallah, in a few years we will go back.
I'd like to add something to that. I think, in fact, the Kuwait market is one of the best markets in the GCC. And the people are very, very nice and very easy to get along with. If maybe you were unlucky 20 years ago, Olivier, but now if you were to try, they're excellent opportunities. They've got the money, they have the need, and they're good people. So I don't see any reason why not to go with them.
Okay, let's discuss offline then, Lovraj.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. So let me just wind this up then. So thank you both, Nelson and Olivier, for this session. You've both been absolutely superb. Your insights, your thoughts, and someone who has a stake in the industry. I've learned a lot personally. I'm sure our audience has as well, and given me personally as well a tremendous amount to ponder over. It was truly an honor and a privilege to moderate this session, and I really genuinely can't wait to see how Besix and Dutco evolve over the next few months, the short or long term, as you said, and hopefully we'll come back and have another session and just see how accurate we were in our predictions today. So a huge thank you to both of you. I hope we can also cooperate on a professional level a lot more. A huge thank you to our entire audience today. Thank you for participating, for engaging, and I truly hope that all of you learned something valuable. We have a brief hiatus next week, and we'll come to you again on the 3rd of September, if I'm not mistaken, with another incredible set of panelists in Daniel Howlett and Bernd, respectively of HSBC and CBD. So it'll be a banking conversation. So thank you again very much to the panelists, the audience, and to everyone watching. Please do take the time to follow us on sort of Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which will be in the description below. So thank you guys very, very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us. Take care.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Nelson. Yuvraj.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye, guys.